Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're exploring what is honestly one of the most transformative concepts in ecological design, and that's permaculture zone analysis. Now, we aren't just looking at where to plant a tree here. We are looking at a master system designed for ultimate human energy efficiency.
To really understand where we're going, we kind of need to look back at where we've been. In our previous lesson, 1.3.1 V4, we covered sector analysis, and that dealt entirely with mapping wild external forces. Things like the sun, the wind, and wildfire vectors. But today, we're flipping the lens. Zone analysis is all about mapping our internal human energies. We're talking about your time, your labor, and quite literally, your footsteps. I want you to hold this question in your mind for me. How do we design our space so we never waste a single step? Imagine a beautifully painted, concentric watercolor map of your property, where every single action you take, every chore you complete, is perfectly calculated to conserve your physical energy. Well, that is exactly what we're building today. So here's our agenda. We'll bridge from sectors to zones, explore the philosophy of conserving energy, and then travel spatially, starting from the inner zones of the mind, out through the agricultural zones, and finally ending up in the unmanaged wild zones. Let's start with Section 1, the sectors to zones bridge. There's this really beautiful yin-yang relationship between our previous lesson on wild energies and our focus today on human systems. Just as a quick recap, wild energies are completely out of our control, right? We use sector analysis to position elements so they either block, channel, or passively filter those sweeping energies, kind of like planting a windbreak to stop a harsh winter gale. Zone analysis, however, is entirely within our control. So, the crucial point here, and this is really the secret to the whole thing, is that zone analysis organizes physical elements on a site based strictly on the frequency of human interaction. The primary division criteria isn't the soil type or the weather, it is visitation frequency. Simply put, how often do you need to touch it, check it, or harvest from it? Moving on to Section 2, conserving energy and time. Let's look at the core philosophy of why we even bother creating these specific spatial boundaries in the first place. Permaculture co-founder Bill Mollison hit the nail on the head when he said the golden rule is to develop the nearest area first, get it under control, and then expand the perimeter. You see, permaculture isn't just gardening. It's this profound energy and time conservation matrix that works with natural human flows, instead of fighting against them. Just think about the sheer exhaustion of a poorly designed farm for a second. If you're walking a mile in the pouring rain just to pick a fresh lemon 100 times a year, you are wasting an incredible amount of time and energy. Contrast that with permaculture efficiency. You just put the lemon tree right by the back door. Meanwhile, an oak tree that you're growing for acorns, something you might only visit twice a year, that can happily live a mile away. When you look at the system as a whole, this brilliant mathematical logic really emerges, based entirely on frequency. Continuous needs stay right at the center. Daily needs are just outside the door. And as your visits drop to weekly or monthly, the physical distance of those elements increases. Section 3, the inner zones. With that framework in mind, let's step into the innermost part of our visualized watercolor map, starting from the absolute center. We're looking at 3 incredibly intimate steps here. A really fascinating aspect of modern permaculture design is the realization that all design actually starts inside the human mind. That's zone 00, before a shovel ever even touches the soil. From the mind, we move out to the physical home, and then to the immediate garden. So zone 00 is where we resolve our planning conflicts, define our goals, and honestly assess our own health and limitations. Zone 0 then is the physical dwelling, the house, or maybe the community center. It is the absolute hub where all available on-site human energy originates. Just outside that hub is Zone 1. This is your high-maintenance area, the stuff requiring multiple daily visits. Because you're checking it constantly, you absolutely want your culinary herbs, fragile seedlings, and everyday kitchen compost right here. Basically, it's the zone you should easily be able to reach in your morning slippers. Section 4, the agricultural zones, zones 2 and 3. Let's move along and step a bit further out from the house into the mid-range concentric rings. As we cross the boundary into Zone 2, we're moving into areas that are slightly less intensively managed. You don't need to be out here every single morning, but you still need to keep a relatively close eye on things, visiting perhaps every 1 to 3 days. In Zone 2, we find elements like backyard poultry, small livestock, and home orchards. This is where your grafted fruit trees live. They require routine pruning and harvesting, sure, but not the obsessive daily weeding of a salad bed. The structures here might include animal shelters or small ponds. Further out is Zone 3, and here we see a pretty significant leap. This is the transition from backyard homesteading to the actual farm zone. The scale of the landscape increases dramatically out here, but human visitation frequency sharply drops off to maybe once a week or even less. Zone 3 elements rely heavily on natural rainfall and unpruned natural trellises. We're talking about broad-scale staple crops, grazing pastures for sheep and cows, and large water storage dams. These are highly resilient systems that can operate largely self-sufficiently for weeks at a time without us needing to constantly intervene. Section 5, the wild zones. Finally, we reach the edges of our design. We're transitioning to the outermost rings of our spatial journey, where human intervention almost entirely disappears. These outer zones border the wilderness itself. As we step into Zone 4 and then Zone 5, our visits become purely seasonal, monthly, or eventually virtually non-existent. Zone 4 is a hardy, unpruned, semi-wild area. We might visit a handful of times a year to collect long-term yields. This is where you'd gather winter firewood, forage for wild mushrooms or nuts, and perhaps manage a woodlot for future timber. It requires only the most basic soil conditioning, if it needs any at all. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate goal of permaculture: leaving space for native ecosystems to thrive completely untouched by human labor. Zone 5 is the natural, unmanaged sanctuary. We do not build here, we do not plant here. We step into Zone 5 solely as students to observe the rules of nature and to learn from the indigenous plants and wildlife. I want to leave you with this final thought. Look at your window right now, or just picture your daily routine. Which zone are your most exhausting, high-maintenance tasks currently sitting in? Are you literally walking a mile for a daily lemon? By applying this simple concentric logic to your own life, you can radically redesign your spaces for ultimate efficiency, saving your energy for what truly matters. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep designing smarter.